Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kaan Volkan. Today we'll be talking about future of information governance. Archiving doesn't cut it anymore. Uh, it's true that I like questions. You'll hear me prompting people to ask questions throughout this webinar. There's no such thing as stupid, dumb questions. Please ask them. Actually, why don't we start with a simple exercise? I see that our chat is already blowing up with people saying hi to each other. Why don't we also go to the Q&A section and say hi to each other through there? Yes, please. So today we'll be doing a couple of things. First, we'll be looking through the technology lens, right? What kind of technologies are technology vendors developing? Where does the market seem to be going? And we'll talk about a couple of customer success stories with ZL Technologies. But before we get started with any of that, I actually want to talk about something I call the curse of records management. Uh, right? When we think about records management nowadays, we're just dealing with too much data. And this is not really easy to analyze data either, right? It's not in Excel sheets, though sometimes it is. It's usually not just numbers, rows, and columns. It's unstructured, it's human speech. It's really hard to analyze. We're also dealing with constant change. This could be just regulatory change, right? New laws get passed every day, every week, every year. The last biggest one was the privacy laws. Uh, but also there are other minor changes happening all the time. It could be where your organization decides to go. It could be a change in what you use, what you think of records are. It also can just be data types, right? Before pandemic, Microsoft Teams was not even a thing, and now we're all on it, and the questions keep on rising, right? Do we capture it? How do we capture it? How long should we keep it? Now, as if these were not enough, we also deal with very long timelines. Ask anyone in your teams, right? Go to marketing, go to sales, ask them, hey, like how long are your timelines? They'll tell you, I have this deal that I need to close in the next month. I want to hit my quarterly quota. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 5 years. Talk to a records manager. They'll tell you, hey, look, I have these documents that I kind of have to hold on to until eternity, right? Like it has an indefinite lifespan, might keep it for 2 decades, might keep it for 5 decades. So when you combine all of these, it gets really hard to make certain decisions. And today, what we'll be trying to do is help you plan ahead by following the industry and following the technology. Because whether we like it or not, we have to work with technology to do our jobs as records managers. And we'll talk a little bit about vendor lock-in, though it's not exactly a phrase I like using. Uh, Sometimes, yes, vendors can be mean and lock you into their data. Most of the time, there's just too much data to move. And whenever we grab a vendor, we choose a vendor, it's not like someone cutting your yard. It's more like you're getting married to that vendor. You'll be with them probably for 5, 10, 20 years. So it's really important to know where your vendor is going and compare that to where the industry is going. Uh, So we'll be talking about two types of data sources today, and we'll be looking at what the lack of information governance in these data sources are costing you and where the market is going. The first one to cover is file shares. This is the top file shares we hear day to day. I also like calling this how to convince your leaders. First of all, they cost a lot, right? The average cost of file share data leak is in between 1.52 and $4.24 million. This was in 2022. Chances are it's much higher now. It makes sense, right? Most of these file shares are not managed for PII and sensitive information. And if there's a file share data leak, and if there's PII there, GDPR, CCPA, privacy laws, they come in and they tell you, hey, you have to pay us $4 million one way or another. And as if this is the last of our concerns, this is all of these problems are growing. They're growing roughly 30% a year. This can range in between 49% at the highest end, or can go all the way down to 26%, depends on how much data your organization creates and captures, but they're roughly growing 30% every year. Now, this is more on the risk end of things. How much are these file shares costing you day to day? Right now, it's about $1,200 per terabyte per year. This is for on-prem file shares. If you go to the cloud, this cost usually is 3 times more. Sad thing, most of it is due to rot. Most of it is stuff you can get rid of. We just are not deleting them. Employees waste quite a while just searching through this trash, right? This wasteland, all this rot. It's around an hour a day. And not only that, people like putting important documents where they should not be put, right? So you'll see some records in your file shares, and you'll lose some records in your file shares. It's roughly estimated 2 to 5% of your records will end up here and will end up being lost. Now, how do we go about solving these issues? What are the vendors doing? How did the technology change over the last 4 years? Here is the different types of solutions, technologies we've seen for file shares, especially with regards to in-place management, right? Not archiving. And here's how they evolved over the last 4 years. In 2020, there were 3 types of solutions. First type was cybersecurity, right? These were your good old cybersecurity solutions. They said, hey, we're already somewhat managing this data. Why don't we start doing a bit more of records management? The second set of solutions were metadata-only solutions. We'll cover these solutions. We'll go over their advantages and disadvantages. And the third set of solutions is what we would call full content solutions. These originated from SEC archives, right? SEC file archives. They realized, hey, this is a need in the market. Let's repurpose our technology. Let's make it in place. Over the last 4 years, cybersecurity and metadata solutions kind of merged together and became one. Now there's not that, yeah, all of it falls under the metadata umbrella right now. There is a new type of solution that is coming out in the market. It's what we call piggyback content solutions, and we'll cover these two. Microsoft is basically the leading vendor and technology in this. If you see any other vendors, chances are they're just piggybacking on Microsoft. That's partly where the name comes from. The name is piggyback. The last type, we call it the dedicated content now, because these piggyback solutions also deal with full content. And in here, you can see a slow transition towards more and more content, right? I expect these metadata solutions to disappear within the next 4 to 6 years. It's what we started seeing in the market. It's also what some of our own customers are moving towards too. So why is this full content management on the rise? There are really 2 reasons. First, there are more regulations, privacy regulations, especially. They require you to manage all of the content. You can't really do privacy without doing the content. There is also a lot of litigation that's going on. Whenever you get sued, you need to run a search. If you're running a search, you need the content. And well, another thing we see is the rise of platforms, right? If you're managing all of the content, which is the harder part of things for technology vendors, they say, hey, look, we have all of the content and you need the content for all of these needs. You need it for records management, you need it for compliance, privacy, e-discovery, more and more analytics now, right? We keep on hearing about ChatGPT, AI, large language models. How do we use our own content to develop our own AI and storage optimization, right? All of these need the content. So most of these solutions are moving slowly towards platforms. And really, all of it is fueled by this idea of in-place management. Right, there's a move away from the archives. They are still there. They're still important. You'll still have an archive. It's for your most important documents now. Everything else, the market says, let's manage it in place. Now, before I go forward, any questions, concerns, please ask away.
No questions at the moment in the chat.
Oh, all right. I see someone raise their hand. Oh, people are raising their hands. Does that mean you guys have questions or?
Lauren Hansen and Siva Blake are both raising their hands. You guys can put something in the chat, or I think if you can come off mute and ask the question, that'd be great.
Talking about technology, gotta love it, right? Half the time it doesn't work. Well, I'll keep going, but if I see any of the questions in the chat or in the Q&A, I'll answer them as soon as they come up. And Kelly, feel free to jump in. So let's start looking at the first type of solution we have, right? Metadata only solutions. Here's how they work. You have the solution on the right side and the data source on the left side. The solution connects to your data source, grabs all of your files. If we're talking about file shares, it analyzes it, it processes it, and then gets rid of the content and just keeps the processed data, right? It keeps your tags. If you told it, hey, go in, use my retention codes, use my lexicons, tag these kinds of documents, it will go in and do that, and it will tell you, hey, these documents have these kinds of tags. Great solution for really short-term or simple use cases, right? So if you're trying to move data from on-prem to the cloud, perfect, right? Use one of these, tell it, hey, I have all this data, just chuck it to the cloud. If you know your retention codes, if you know your data perfectly, right? If you know what's exactly in your file shares, give it the retention codes, it will go in, it will tag everything you want, and it will keep it proper. Or if you're trying to just deduplicate things. These solutions have an issue when you try to use it for long-term management, right? We talked about this. There's a lot of data and there's a lot of change. So if there's any change with this kind of solution, it actually needs to do this whole process again, right? It needs to connect your data source, grab all this data and move it back to its system again and process it again. And this is extremely costly, right? When we're talking about information governance, records management, from a technology standpoint, the most costly thing you can do is processing of data. We also call it ingestion, and most of you have heard this term and kind of hate this term. It's sometimes called migration, right? This is almost a migration on its own whenever you're doing this, right? Whenever your solution has to go back into your data source and grab all of the data and ingest it and reprocess it. So not great for long-term solutions because it has no content and you just need to reprocess this data time and time and time after again. Any questions on this so far? All right, looks like no. I'm going forward. The second type of solution is what we call the piggyback content solution. We'll be talking specifically about Microsoft here because this solution, it relies on the data source, right? It tells the data source, hey, you go ahead and do the processing, and your data source is going to be Microsoft. You might see other solutions on the market. If you hear something like we use APIs, we use connectors, we use agents, this is what they're doing. They have a piggyback solution. What they're doing is they're grabbing what Microsoft offers you with Purview and E5, and they're just repurposing it a bit. They're putting their own take on it. They're putting a bit of their scaffolding. It makes maybe it looks a little prettier on their system, but all of the functionality comes from Microsoft itself.
And Kaan, we have a question in the chat. Will the
All right.
updated metadata update the data source?
For the first type of solution, hi Alan, by the way. Glad to see you could join us. So it depends, yes. It kind of depends on your vendor. I know two types of vendors that can do it and two that can't. It This gets a little tricky. It's a really good question, Alan. Right? Certain vendors, they have a fear of deleting data. Right? Like they can go in and do the duplications, but if you ask them to do any kind of defensible deletion, they'll not be able to do it. So that's one way that this kind of solution would not interact with the data source as much as you would like it to. Some solutions, especially if they're more SEC archive based, right? If that's their background, they do not like updating the metadata on the data source. When we talk about SEC, FINRA, right, banking regulations, it's very strict. Even that, like updating of the metadata, can count as inference, right? It can count as, hey, you edited this data and now it's not the original. So something must be going on here. We don't trust you. So if the solution is coming from that kind of background, they'll say, we don't want to touch on any of the metadata on your data source, right? Because it's kind of risky. And I actually don't recommend getting a solution that changes the metadata on the files you have. It can turn it into a bit of a horror story, especially if you're trying to migrate things. But yeah, hope that helps.
And what happens if you identify and purge rot?
With the metadata only solution, I'm not sure if I understand the question. If it identifies the rot and purges it, it will not keep it within its data store, right? It might keep audit reports. It should keep audit reports, these kinds of solutions. But it's not going to keep everything. And in here, it's already just keeping very limited amount of data. So it shouldn't be a problem for the solution part of things. It will be deleted from the data source if they can actually delete.
Great. It sounds like that answered the question. Thanks, Kaan.
Thank you for those questions, Alan. So yeah, going back to our piggyback idea, right? If you hear anything like connectors, agents, APIs, this is what they're doing. They are relying on the back of Microsoft. Here's how this technology works. The piggyback solution orders the data source what to do. The data source starts with running a search, looking for the documents you asked it, right? You might say, hey, find me these documents, put them on legal hold, put a retention code on it, delete it. Then it will process that search, build you a fancy graph, and send it back to you. Now, at this point, you have the option to look at this graph, go back to the data source, and do whatever you wanted to do, right? If you say, hey, I wanted to put these on legal hold, put it on legal hold. I want to delete them, delete them. This solution is a huge step up compared to metadata only solutions because it has the full content and it can change as your organization changes. So if you want to do anything longer term than a couple months, and if you have more than one need, right, it's a bit of a complex need you have, this works. Now, there are a couple of issues with this kind of solution. First problem is the IG solution in here has no direct access to data, right? All of the content, everything is on the data source itself. And the data source have different priorities. Its biggest priority is receive, send, delete. This is for emails, for file shares, pretty much similar things, right? There's no send, but there's receive, give access to, and delete. Second priority is just indexing of this data, so making it searchable. And if the end user tries to search for something, running that search. The last priority is IG tasks. And what ends up happening with these solutions is when you ask it to do something like, hey, find me all the records in these 5 file shares, find me all of my records in these 100 mailboxes, Microsoft will come back to you and tell you, look, we're busy enough already. We'll do this. We'll just do it over the weekend. Now, that might not sound like a huge problem. Where the problem starts is if you ask these kinds of solutions to do something that will take longer than a week. But let's say you gathered all of your teams, you have your legal team, compliance team, records managers team, and you worked on this perfect retention schedule. You worked so hard, you figured out exactly what you need to keep and exactly what you need to get rid of. You said, look, we want to only keep 10% of our data. That's what we'll be doing. And you came up with your lexicon, your tagging algorithm. You give it to Microsoft. It's a large lexicon, right? It's got 800, 900, 1200 words. Microsoft will come back to you and tell you, sorry, we can't do that. We can only do 500 at maximum. If you go over 500, you know what we can do? We'll just put everything on legal hold. We'll just put everything on retention. Everything will be tagged because we don't really want to run these searches. You say, okay, that's fine by me, right? Like, let's keep going. How long would it take me after you unfound it? Microsoft tells you, hey, it might take me up to a whole week before I actually apply any of these policies. Now, why is that an issue? When you apply a policy, what Microsoft does, right? This is in place management, is it retains things in place. And I'll actually show you. Also, by the way, you'll have access to these slides and all the research here with the hyperlinks to Microsoft is right over here. What they mean by retention in place is your data goes to your deleted folders. If I can find my folder, deleted items folder. And if you guys can see, there's this small tag here. recover items recently removed from this folder. It actually keeps it here if you're using Purview. And as you can see, I have this really fancy button here called Purge Selected Items. If you go select all, purge selected items, okay. Whoop, all of that data gone. Now, it's not as scary as it sounds. When you hit purge, it goes to somewhere else too in Microsoft, and it will be kept there for 2 weeks, right? So it's not the end of the world exactly. But remember, it takes a week for your policies to work, and it takes 2 weeks before a purge is run. So you have that one whole week where someone might delete something and the purge might just run, and now you've lost your records. Now, let's say you're okay with all of this. You're using Purview, you're on Microsoft, you're using one of these piggyback solutions. There is what we call view 1000 problem here. You can only view the 1000 documents, right? Because it goes back to here. All of your data is on the left-hand side. It's within the data source. It's not inside the management system. The management system has no access to this data. It does not keep any copies. So if you say, I actually want to see what you found, I actually want to see if these are things I want to put on legal hold, if I want to apply retention to, it will tell you, look, you found 15,000 items or 2 million items. I'll show you only a 1,000. If you want to see the rest, tough luck, go do an export. If you say, I want to export, it's going to take a while. This is their top limitation. All of these, as I repeat, come from directly Microsoft's own technical documentation. I spent last 4 years reading 4,000 pages of their documentations. They are constantly updating their technology. Most of these issues will be slowly resolved over time, but the main problem will still remain, which is the solution has no direct access to this data, and it's going to have different priorities. So whenever you ask this solution to do something that's super important, that's going to keep your company safe, no matter how much it develops, it's going to come back and tell you, look, this is not a priority for me. We'll get to it at some point. So this is our piggyback solutions. Now, I'm a big fan of these kinds of solutions, dedicated content management solutions, because they don't run into any of the issues we looked at previously. They might have their own different issues, which we'll cover, but I see it as far less problematic. In here, what this solution does is it connects to your data source. It actually grabs all this data, it processes it, and it makes it searchable. It keeps what we call a search index, not the data, not the original documents, not the copies, just a search index. So whenever you actually want to run a search, whenever you actually want to do any kind of records management, policy application, all of the processing is done on the right-hand side within your information governance platform. And what this means is its biggest and most important priority is your needs. So it's going to get it done on time, and it will have a lot more scalability compared to the piggyback solutions. Now, one issue that you might run into here, and this is where you really want to check in with your vendors, is how it connects to these data sources. There are a couple different ways it can connect to them, and it can make or break your deployment. So just make sure you talk with their technical teams, ask them, hey, is the connection scalable? Do you know how to actually grab this data? Do you know how to work with this data? Can you track things back and go back to the data source and do the policy application, right? Just check in with their technical team. Uh, and once you do all of your records management, all of your tasks here, right? You can order it to do any kind of task, find me these records, put them on legal hold. It will go back to the data source and order data source to do it. As you can see, there's not that much strain on the data source. And this is why it's able to do things much, much faster and without any of the limitations we've seen for the piggyback content solutions. So those are the three types of solutions we have. I am going to take a 1 minute break to give you guys some time to ask me questions, and I'll sip on my coffee because my voice is starting to crack. Questions, please. All right, let's keep going. So here's another way to evaluate vendors, technologies out there. You'll have access to this deck, so you can go over this on your own time. If you combine these two ways to analyze the vendors out there, you should be able to pick the one that fits your needs exactly, right? You can say, hey, I want a short-term solution for my SharePoint only, and I just want to deduplicate my data, right? And you just plug those into here, right? You say, okay, I want to do SharePoint. I want records management somewhat, right? And efficiency. That's what it is. And it will tell you, okay, if that's all you want to do, you should probably go with metadata only management, right? You don't need too much processing here because you're trying to do something that's going to take 3 to 6 months at most. So you'll have access to this. Feel free to use it. I highly recommend it. Now we'll go into some success stories, customer success stories. The first one is from a top 5 bank, a large bank in the US. Their use case was file management, fraud cleanup, GDPR and CCPA compliance. They have over 200,000 employees and over 3 petabytes of files. Their biggest priority was minimizing risk cost effectively. This was for unregulated file sharing, right? So they were not quite worried about defensibility, although that's still important because these are records managers, right? That's what we do. That's what we live for. But their biggest issue, their biggest priority was minimizing risk cost effectively. We recommended them something we call least processing principle, or in other words, use big buckets, right? If something looks like rot, chances are it's rot, right? If you come across a file, a JPEG, a video file that hasn't been opened in 20 years, chances are it's a cat video. So you can probably delete it.
Hey, Kaan, we have another question.
All
Would
right.
you mind talking more about what's involved in the data processing?
Yes. Is it related to here, this page, or what we covered so far?
Previous.
Okay, so what we covered so far. Uh, so it depends on the technology itself. There are really 3 types of data processing out there. 3 steps that they do. This is a great question. Whenever I'm faced with a great question, I'll take a while to answer. And I'll say it's a great question to buy myself some time. So usually there's a curation level, right? And in here, what the software is doing is it's just trying to create a database, right? This could be any type of database for the dedicated content and piggyback content, it's usually an index, full text index, right? It's what powers your search functionality. And it also has a metadata index, right? So it usually has two databases in these solutions. For the metadata only solution, it only has a single database, usually, right? And within the metadata index, this is where you keep your tags. So this is where things like, hey, I want to keep this for 5 years. I want to delete it after 7 years. After 12 years, move it to second tier storage. That's where those kinds of things are kept within those databases. So that's one type of data processing out there. And this type dictates how long you can use your solution. The second type of data processing that we usually see is more of the curation of the data. So let's say you give your software your retention codes, right? Actually has to go into the data and figure out, okay, like, does this document, does this email, does this item fit into my records codes, right? Is it actually a record? So that's another type of processing that happens within these solutions. So that's two, and that kind of processing happens first, and then it goes into your metadata index, which is the second processing, the initial processing I talked about. There's one more type of processing that happens. This is more around audits, and it kind of depends on your use case. I'm not going to only talk about in-place management for this one, right? For example, if you're doing SEC related records, you need to capture a lot of data. You need to journal this data first. You need to capture when it was captured, right? You need to say, hey, we got this email on July 12th at 2:52 p.m. You need to capture which route it took, right? It went to server 13 first, it went to server 25 first, and then it came to our system. You need to capture a ton of data, for example, for SEC archiving, right? Within in-place management, this usually just boils down to what I call interactivity reports and retention reports, right? So it's more of, hey, who viewed these documents? Who actually tagged these documents? How long is the retention here? And did we actually delete this document when its retention period was over? So those are three types of processing you'll commonly see, right? One, which is the main database that you'll use. This helps you with long-term data management, right? If you have full content, that's for long-term data management. If you only deal with metadata only, it's for short-term management. The second type of processing is just how the software tags documents, how it figures out whether this is a record or not. It can be what we call a regular expression technology, regex tech. So just looks for keywords, looks for patterns. It could be using AI, though I don't quite recommend AI. And the third type of processing is more around just making sure you have audit logs. So those are the three types of processing that happens.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking that question.
Why do you not recommend AI?
So a couple of reasons. I've read this document a couple of years ago, so I probably need to find an updated version. But they compared good old lexicons to AI, especially for records management, and they also did it for compliance. They realized, look, at the end of the day, what AI learns is just a good old lexicon, right? It's you're always looking for the same type of documents, right? And all you're doing with AI is making it fancy while just creating a lexicon. So that's one issue. The Second part is AI is not exactly defensible, right? Like, and I say this to our internal teams all the time that get confused about defensibility, right? When you think about defensibility, you should be thinking to yourself, if I was in front of a paranoid judge, would this work? Would this fly? If you go in front of a paranoid judge and they ask you, hey, look, like, why did you not tag this document? Your answer shouldn't be, I don't know. And if they ask you, who knows? You'll say, well, no one knows because AI is a black box, right? No one knows why it tags things. No one knows why it doesn't tag things. So kind of risky there, right? I highly doubt the judge is going to give you a pass. And actually, just recently, FINRA, I think, it got really close to banning all AI for compliance reviewing, at least. Third reason is they AI and records management can integrate perfectly, but if you actually look at what they're doing, they are the exact opposites, right? If you look at AI, it's for optimization, it's for driving insights, it's for understanding and learning. If you look at records management, it's more about defensibility, standardization, right? AI is a bottom-up process, right? You feed a ton of data and then it will spit you an answer. Records management is a bit more top to bottom, right? You say, these are our standards. This is what will keep us safe, right? And within those standards, we have flexibility. So they kind of go against each other. If you want to use AI for your records management, what I would say is use it to gain insights. Using those insights, go and create your standards. If you just tell AI, go in and do all of the tagging for me, it's going to make mistakes. It's not as precise as you would like it to be. It does not understand context. Yes, ChatGPT is impressive. Yes, these large language models are phenomenal. It makes mistakes. It does not understand context like a human being would, right? And it really does not have any standards. So that's why I don't recommend it, right? Like you can still use it, just make sure you use it that way. You use AI to get insights. You plug those insights into your standards within records management and then apply them top down.
Great, thank you. And then, oh, never mind. We had a question, but we are disregarding that.
All good.
And we got a response. That was a great answer.
Thank you. I mean, this is what I do full time, research. Uh, so this is a case study from a top 5. Well, actually, before I go, more questions, please. We love them. This is what I'm here for. This is what we're here for, right? You can find these webinars online. We already have a couple of them recorded. This interaction is much more important to me and probably to you as well. So please ask more questions. I love them.
And we have about 15 minutes left, Kaan.
Oh God. Okay. That's not quite a lot of time. Okay.
But no last questions.
Here's what I'm going to do if everyone's okay with it. We'll fly through this content really fast. I want to talk just a little bit about emails. And then last 10 minutes, I want it to be just a question answer part so that everyone can freely ask questions. So in here, it's a top 5 bank. They just want to purge data. Couple tips. Take shortcuts, right? If it looks like ROT, if it's a video that hasn't been opened in 2 decades, chances are it's a cat video. Go in there, tag it as ROT, delete it. Again, this is a company that was not worried about defensible deletion, although it's important, but their biggest priority is just minimizing risk cost effectively. And what it looks like is You start with 3 petabytes of unknown. You go in and tag the obvious things, just metadata analysis here, right? We know these are records because it literally says contract. We know these are raw because it's a PDF that hasn't been opened in 2 decades and it's a soup recipe, chances are. Then start analyzing the content. This is where you'll find specific types of records and PII. You'll always have this middle ground. You'll always have unknown. And in here, we recommend a proactive approach, something like delete these documents if no one touches them in 7 years. That's usual. That flies perfectly with banks because that's what SEC says either way. So they love this 7-year retention period. Now, the beauty of in-depth processing is, right, if you have the full content, you can actually keep processing more and more and minimizing this middle ground. Now, actually, same company. After they deleted about 60% of their data, cleaned it up defensively, they came back to us and they said, look, a lot of this is in cloud. It's costing us a ton of money. We also realize we do need a bit more defensibility, right? We want in-depth records management. And this time, priorities completely different, defensibility and cost optimization, right? We told them you need a twofold approach, right? Cloud cost optimization is for that middle section, the TBD, unknown, right? Proactive retention, right? You don't need a lot of bells and whistles and control for that data. Just chuck it into secondary tier storage after 90 days. For the important documents you have, we'll grab it and we'll put it in a real archive, right? So now what you have is that you have a threefold management, right? Most of your data is in place managed. The data you want to storage optimize goes to a storage optimized section of an archive. And the data you really want to keep goes to a fully dedicated archive. The third use case is actually divestitures use case from a major manufacturer in the US. Their priority was defensibility. This is what you'll have to go through if you've never cleaned up your file shares and if you never manage them, right? Because in here, what you're trying to do is figure out what's in your data and be extremely defensible, right? This is what they were trying to do. It's going to be the exact same thing you want to do. So we told them, start slow, take your time. Find your sources, spend 6 months analyzing it in every possible way. If you want to spend a whole year, 2 years, it did not take 2 weeks for this data to be created. You're not going to delete it and clean it up in 2 weeks. Once you feel confident, then take action. And in here, one little detail is super important. You want your legal team and compliance team on this as well, but you don't want to collaborate until the very end stages. You want 3 different points of view. You want all of these people to go in and analyze and tag the data the way they want to, the way they think it should be tagged. At the end of all the analysis and tagging, then you say, let's get together. Let's look at what we have. Let's create actual rules, retention settings. And this organization, they started with about 60 tags. By the end of their project, they had 5,600 tags. It's a lot of tags. Once they had everything tagged, they got together. They said, let's look for some patterns. Let's see which documents have 3 tags, which documents have 5 tags, and then create a hierarchical rule set. And they successfully followed through with their divestiture. Now, I'll quickly go over emails and then Q&A time. Whenever you hear emails, 90% of the technology out there is piggyback technology. You'll probably hear this from your legal team. This is a huge improvement for them as far as e-discovery goes, legal hold goes, and collection goes, right? They spend a lot of money collecting data, putting them on legal hold and reviewing them. Reviewing is like 95% of your costs. Now in here, well, we recommend a dedicated content management because it gives you one cutting edge. And we call it the weaponized e-discovery. So what you do is if you have all of the content in a dedicated system, you can run a lot of searches and do a lot of visualization. And what you can do is you can start and find custodians by running a search, which is not what the legal team does. Go in and ask that person, hey, look, you're at the center of this search. We get sued for trading Apple stocks. You're the person who talks about Apple stocks the most. Tell us what you know. Based on what they tell you, you go back, you edit your search, you run it again. And with this, you figure out who's at the center of this. At the end, your search will look something like this, which is actually from one of our clients. And then you go to your opposing counsel and you tell them, look, we ran all these searches. Here's our suggested keyword list. We've done this 16 times before. 13 of those people settled directly. The other 3, we beat them quite easily, right? If you want to change any of the keywords here are 2 other documents that contain all the changes we're willing to do for you. Take it or leave it. People usually take it. The major benefit for this kind of approach with fully dedicated system is you win more cases. You reduce your expenses quite a lot, mostly because you're reviewing far less documents. Kaylee, how many minutes do I have?
You have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll do one small shameless plug and then let's do Q&A. If everyone enjoyed this session so far, I share everything I learned, all of my insights on LinkedIn. I post daily with fancy graphics, just interesting stuff. All of it is about records management. If anyone is curious, if anyone wants to support me, this would be huge for me, right? This is what I do for a living. This is my passion, to talk and share about records management and to have these speaking engagements. So if you go into my profile and write a comment, something like amazing webinar, only if you liked it, it will help me get more speaking opportunities. Now I'll send my LinkedIn through the chat. Yes. Now
And
it's time for just questions.
yeah, so will these presentation materials be shared with all attendees?
I think so. That usually is how it goes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. The slides or the presentation as well as also the recording will be used. And I can tell you that if you go onto ARMA's website and search under webinars, that you will be able to access the information for later use. It's under the resources tab.
Great, thank you.
If anyone has more questions, feel free. We've got a few more minutes.
Yes, please, questions.
Oh, there's still 70 attendees. Somebody has to, or more than 70 attendees. Are you sure nobody else wants to bend his ear really quick? Getting some nice comments, Kaan.
Thank you.
One question at the very beginning was, where's Jack?
Oh yeah, he is in the bedroom with my girlfriend because he was playing with Piper and being too loud for me to focus. But I'll post a picture of Jack on my LinkedIn soon.
Jack is your dog.
So
case you don't know.
Yes, Jack is my dog.
We do have a question.
There's a question.
Any idea about costs or fines related to the Movelt speech?
This is the first time I'm hearing about mobile speech.
Move it.
Oh, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Move it speech.
Is it possible for people to go live, Veronica, so that it's
No, unfortunately, for the settings don't allow the participants to like unmute or take themselves off camera or onto camera. But yeah, so it says any idea about cost/fines related to the Move It Beach. Move It, oh, I'm sorry, Move It breach. Third party cloud that was breached about a year ago.
This is the first time I'm hearing about it, but it makes sense to me that there was a breach. It happens quite frequently with cloud technologies. Also, 2000, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was IBM or McKinsey that said this. File shares on the cloud tend to be one of the riskiest data sources because by default, file share gives access to a lot of people, right? Like that's kind of what it is used for all of us to have access to documents. So they tend to get breached quite a lot. And whenever they get breached, there's always some PII there, usually, and that's what costs you the most money. But I've never heard of this before, so I'll do my research and come back with an answer.
Right.
It looks like it exposed personal data of at least 64 million people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, even the social security numbers were hacked at some point. I think that was 2 years ago. This is something we talk about internally a lot. It's really hard to convince people externally, right outside of our organization, which is like we all jumped into the cloud thinking it's the best of all worlds, right? And we said, look, like it's the middle of pandemic, we need to be on the cloud. No one really looked at the risks. No one looked at the costs. And it just keeps on coming back, right? Like your storage cost, what we hear is just tripled with that single move, just moving everything to the cloud. Now you're paying 3 times as much. Looks like there's also a lot of cybersecurity issues.
Well, we are right at the top of the hour. So thank you so very much, Kaan. Thank you, ZL. Wonderful presentation. As you see, you had great attendees and a lot of good feedback and conversation. So it was really engaging. So thank you again to our sponsor ZL and to ARMA InfoCon in Houston. We'd love to have you. ZL will be on site and hopefully Kaan will be joining. Usually he's there. So we hope to see you all again on the next InfoNext webinar and in Houston. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
And please check my LinkedIn.
Bye all.
Take care.